Hello, everyone. This is Jacob Hobio, the producer of The Apex. In this episode, Jan and RJ interview Shwaiz Bhatti. Shwaiz is a graduate of Walsh University and is currently pursuing a degree in human factor psychology at Arizona State University. This is an emerging field of psychology. Believe it or not, Shwaiz was unaware of the field even existing until late in his college career. Since joining the field, he has done research for the Air Force, Army, and other government agencies. Listen to how Shwaiz offers advice on how to go against the grain, how to deal with changing majors and parents that may not understand, the importance of doing what you love versus what others think is right for you. If you want to support us, there are 3 ways to do so. One is to donate to our cause at www.patreon.com/the Apex Podcast. Second, visit our merch line that is proudly partnered with Envision Clothing Company at envisionclothingcompany.com. Thirdly, the other is completely free. All we ask is if you learn something from this episode or know someone that needs to hear our message, share it with them. Please subscribe and hope this pushes you toward your apex.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Apex Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jan Almasy, and if my voice sounds a little bit different today, it's because my mom is hoarding cats inside of our house. And she did not tell me for 2 straight weeks, so I could have been taking Zyrtec this entire time, but...
Is that going to be the new soap scent?
Yeah, this is cat dander.
Do you love the smell of your cat?
So this is actually an improvement over the last 2 weeks because, my patients have been looking at me funny because my voice has been completely shot. And at this point, I just sound like a very deep, I could be a radio announcer right now. Or like one of those movie people in a world.
Yeah,
Right?
perfect.
So, as always, seated across the table from me is my co-host and partner in crime, Mr. R.J. Holiday.
That's the best intro I think you've given me yet. I feel like John Wick.
Oh, yeah. Well, we were talking about kitties, though, not puppies.
they're all
All
little
the same.
animals. Yeah,
John
I'd be
Wick is
just upset.
protecting the animal.
Yeah, but what's up, everybody?
It's been a while since you've been on a show. I think the
Mhm.
last couple of shows that we released, you haven't been with us.
the
'Cause
last,
the last one we released, I was with Jim.
Mhm.
Well,
and then you were out of town.
yeah, there's a couple of them.
That you were out of town for when you recorded. That I wasn't there. Stuff's just been busy, man. I mean, between now and when we did the episode with John, the studio's done.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a
cool
lot of
thing.
time.
So to let you guys know, we have opened our studio in downtown Canton, at 309 Court Street. It's going to be right on Centennial Plaza when that gets built. But it's in the Innovation District, headquarters right down here in downtown Canton, Ohio. Those are going to be pictures that we're going to start releasing coming up, going into Christmas and going into the new year. But if you like Peaky Blinders, watch and pay attention to what Tom Shelby's office looks like. That'll be the only hint
Inspiration
that I give as
Oh,
to
yeah.
what our studio looks like. But today, I would like to start introducing our guest. So I'm just going to read a little bit of the major that our guest is currently pursuing after he achieved his bachelor's at Walsh University in psychology. So right now, he's at the Polytechnic Institute in Arizona, at Arizona State, I believe, right? So the major itself is called Human Systems Engineering. Okay, so right now, this individual is pursuing a master's in Human Systems Engineering. And what that is, and I'm reading this directly from the ASU website here, is students become experts in human interaction with engineered systems by applying methods of experimental psychology and cognitive science. So some of the broad applications include aviation, consumer psychology, health and hospital safety, learning, product usability, social cognition, and sports performance. Students will be able to customize their educational experience by creating a capstone project that highlights their research interests. But they basically learn how humans influence systems inside of whether it's militaristic structures, corporate structures, sports structures. How does the human factor affect what a system is supposed to do and how it's supposed to operate, which I think is amazing because ever since we started Apex, our entire mission has been bringing the human factor back to communication, right? We want to bring that human voice back to communication. So with that, I would like to introduce Mr. Shwaiz Bhatti.
Thank you for having me on the show, guys. Nice
Absolutely.
to be here.
Welcome to the party, son.
Thanks.
So, me and RJ have actually both known Shwaiz for a while at this point. I graduated from Walsh University as well. I believe the year after.
What is this? 2018?
Yeah.
We graduated.
We graduated
same-
together?
Yeah.
Cool. So I because I was supposed to graduate in 2017, and I was like having trouble remembering that, where I was like, shit, did we graduate together? Or did
Dude,
we actually did?
my 10-year reunion for high school is like in a year, so I was like, wait, what?
What?
Where was I?
So I was like, I assumed that like it was just, Shwaiz graduated the year that I was supposed to graduate, and then I was a bum and didn't graduate until the year after. But
And the
oh,
only
so
reason,
you were there for the whole Apex speech and
yeah,
and
that's how I
everything.
remember it.
Ah,
That's how I
okay,
remember it.
okay. What did you think? Just out of curiosity.
The speech?
Yeah.
He's like,
Now,
He was like,
now-
I was crap. He was
I
like,
mean, at this point, I can't really remember it because it's been such a long time.
Right.
I did listen though. It's just-
All right.
I remember the one thing that you said was a quote. I forget. I think maybe a gentleman was a general or something, and he said the apex of my life is my death.
Yes, Lieutenant
Okay.
Colonel Phil Brown.
oh, so he got the main
He
point.
got- yeah, the main point stuff.
He took
I
the
was
spark,
listening.
the Spark Note version of it. So I'm
Right.
out of here. Give me my diploma.
Right. Well, and that's what you know what? And that actually does not surprise me at all. So like when I gave the speech, I literally opened with, "Hey guys, the Cavs are winning." Like, just so you know, I know we've been sitting here for 2 hours, but like everybody's watching the Cavs game on their phone anyway.
Yeah.
So just for the
You guys
people that
wanna
don't have
score-
the balls to do that during
Back when
graduation,
people watched Cav games.
yeah, I was like, the Cavs are winning currently. So just so you know. And then I even said in the beginning, I was like, for the short amount of time that I can attempt to hold your attention right now, here's what we're going to talk about. And that's the opening line. So that was
Nice.
me holding the
There
attention
you
span
go.
for the first 30 seconds.
Didn't that speech go viral?
Yeah, I
thought
mean
it
that kind of is what landed us here where we're at. Yeah.
It was the
It went Goalcast picked it up on YouTube. So like if you go into their playlist, it's like Denzel Washington, me, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it's just like completely thrown off. It's like multinational movie star, small town dude from Canton, Ohio, and then
Arnold.
like, Arnold. Like
Arnold.
I don't even need to say anything else. You just say Arnold.
There you go.
So why don't you kind of tell me where you grew up
Mhm.
and kind of what got you interested in psychology in the first place?
Right. Well, I grew up in Canton, Ohio, so like here. This is home for me, even though I was born in Indiana. But this is all I remember. Went to Perry local schools. Went to Whipple Elementary, then Pfeiffer, then Perry High School, and I guess I've always kind of growing up. I was kind of a nervous kid. I was pretty quiet, and then so. In any kind of big gathering, whether it was like a family gathering or even in the classroom or something like that, I was always very quiet, but I was always watching people. And I was always studying, like, what are they saying and why are they saying what they're saying? And I think when I got into middle school, I kind of broke out of my shell a little bit more and then started having, my own group of friends and everything. And
I was gonna say like zero part of me expected you to say that you were the quiet kid. in
yeah, no,
school.
like growing up, I was very nervous. I had a lot of anxiety just because I was a very sheltered kid. I didn't go out much. I didn't really experience the world a lot as a kid. I was stayed at home a lot. But then in middle school, it's kind of like a different environment, and you're just with a bunch of people that you don't know because they're all coming from different grade
Schools,
school.
yeah.
Yeah, and so kind of just like I said, broke out of my shell, and then like the junior high and high school years, I always kind of just played the role of the person that people would go to if they had problems.
You're like the empath.
The empath.
Almost. Yeah, I
Exactly.
feel that
And-
110%. I know
Yeah.
RJ probably feels the same way.
Oh yeah.
You are in good company, sir.
Yeah. And then I took an AP Psych class, but I had a little bit of an issue starting college because my parents wanted me to be a doctor. So I figured, I'll try it, and if I'm good at it, maybe I'll just stick with being a doctor and I can still help people.
Mhm.
And then my freshman year of college. It was horrible. I was bio pre-med, and I mean, I hated it. I can't even like tell you one thing that I learned my freshman year from those.
That's rough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
that's
was
tough.
It
I
was
don't remember
hard.
freshman year.
Period.
um,
I'm not going there.
and then I told my dad, like, because I had a good scholarship, and my dad only had to pay, you know, whatever was left, which wasn't a whole lot, and he wanted to. So I was like, you're paying money for this, and I'm here. You don't want me to work for you, but you want me to be educated. So I gotta decide something else.
Figure out something you like.
Yeah,
So,
Right. Rather than just dumping money into an empty hole.
right. So he asked me what I thought I'd be good at, and I said psychology.
Call of Duty.
Call of Duty.
I want to be a streamer.
Call of Duty.
And so basically, when I started psychology my sophomore year, it didn't take a whole lot of effort for me to learn and get good grades. So I kind of stuck with it. I was doing the clinical route, but then I realized I don't really have a lot of patience.
Gotcha.
So I wanted to go and do the research route.
Okay. Nothing
And
wrong
then-
with that.
Yeah. And I figured like I could still have an impact and create a legacy through my research.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, and then when I was just looking on the internet, like, what can I do? Like, what makes money and what is fun? And after a while, my sister actually, she kind of messaged me a video of this guy. His name is Don Norman, and he's talking about doors. He's famous. Like, if you Google Norman door, like you type in Norman door on Google, this guy is just an old guy talking about like how doors are not intuitive. Like, you don't know if you should push or pull. And
Oh, I do that all the time.
yeah, they're not. They're
That's
not.
why they come with labels
Yeah,
most of the
yeah.
time.
Even with labels, people still don't know what to
Oh
do.
yeah.
Oh
And
yeah,
so-
no.
Even if you-
I
even if you
headbutt
put
doors
pull
all
on
the
there,
time.
Yeah.
But it is a bar that runs like horizontally
Exactly.
across, people will push.
Exactly.
But if the
So-
bar is vertical
Yeah.
and people will pull it.
Yeah.
It's like a split second thing in your brain where
Yeah.
like if you see it,
Yeah.
your body instinctively like goes to what you should do, regardless of if there's a massive sign like at eye level that says, "Please God, read this and
Right.
pull the door. Do not push it,
Right.
or the building will collapse."
Because you're gonna look at the handle first before you read anyway.
Yep.
That's the thing, and so you don't know what to do.
hmm
But this guy Don Norman, I like Googled him. He's a super famous guy, father of user experience design, and so when I told my professors I wanted to do human factor psychology, they didn't know what that was.
Oh, they didn't even know.
They didn't know. They're like, "What is that? I've never heard of that." And I talked to my advisor, Dr. Wayand. Shout out to Dr. Joe Wayand. And he kind of he reached out to some folks at like University of Akron and some other people that had graduated, and he got me into contact with a few people that are now doing human factors. But I'm excited to be here so I can talk to you guys because I wish someone had told me when I was a freshman this is something I can go into.
It's interesting. It's
It is.
definitely
Well,
an
that's
niche, interesting field that most people probably don't look at. Because
yeah.
I think when it comes to developing stuff like that, like for example, a door, I
Mhm.
think a lot of people just assume that that's something that's worked out on its own.
Right.
That doesn't really need like specifically looked at. Like, well, hopefully the people using the door
Mhm.
have two brain cells to rub together.
Right.
Well, maybe sometimes it takes a little bit more insight into why things are being done a certain way or
Mhm.
why someone looks
Right.
at something like this. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely until until he had called me and told me that we were interviewing today, I'd never heard of what you were going to school for. So
Well, and the thing that I find super interesting is that like I said, I think that I'm super excited to dive into this because I think it fits into what Apex does
Mhm.
without us realizing that we're doing it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So like when we first started, because I mean we already kind of talked about how like we're all empaths in here almost, right? And that definition is just the ability to put yourself in other people's shoes and understand
Yeah.
why they're making the decisions they're making,
Right.
or why they
because of-
feel the way that they do.
yeah, and factoring and everything. It's actually really creepy. Like, and I tell people like I try not to be like I literally can't shut it off.
Mhm.
Like there was this, my friend Megan was texting me yesterday, and she's going through some issues like She's a nurse that I work with, right? And she said, "You scare me because you get people."
Yeah.
She was like, and I don't like being understood until I let people in. But she
Right.
was like, you understand it whether I want you to or not.
Right.
And I was like, I don't try to do that. But I was like, I've been around her so much that like I reached out and just asked her, like, hey, like, are you okay?
Right.
And she was like, how did you even know something was wrong? And I just kind of explained, like, well, you have these little tics.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I noticed that they were off at work the other day.
Right.
She was like, what the hell?
Leave me alone.
Yeah. And I was like, I swear I don't
Get
do
out
it
of my
on purpose.
head.
Like, I'm not staring at people just like, I wonder what they're doing.
Right.
But like, there's just something that I pick up on.
Intuition.
Right. And it's intuition. But like with the user experience side of things, and this is going to sound very Gary V, but it's like, I mean, true down to my core, where it's like, I 110% believe that if we can bypass all the BS in between like message and end user, and you can learn how to empathize with your end user, then that's the biggest piece, especially with communication. So like with us, you know, we tell people all the time, none of us are traditionally trained marketing or communications majors.
Right.
You have two hardcore science majors and then a science major mixed with management that are trying to run a communications business.
Not a good mix.
Well, yeah,
Worked so
I mean,
far.
but so like this is what I explain to people because that's generally people's gut response, right? But like, so I'm a nurse with a minor in clinical psych.
Yeah.
And so like my entire training is being able to empathize with an end user in a relatively short period of time. Because like with a patient, I have to be able to figure out what they need to hear or what they need to understand like as quickly as possible in order to form rapport. So, and then the clinical psych background helps me understand why they're feeling the way that they're feeling so that I can kind of plug in, you know, where are they on the like development chart?
Right.
You know, what stage of life are they going through? What are they potentially afraid of because they're, you know, 30 years old versus 60 years old? And then Popio was a bio pre-med major. And so he's really, really good at problem solving.
Yeah.
I mean, like he can sit down and look over a bunch of data and just be like, okay, this is where we need to plug this in here, which I suck at because I hate looking at data. I'd rather interact with people.
Yeah.
And then RJ like has all of this management experience, which we recently discovered like a month or two ago because we completely forgot about it. But it's like, oh, like you've been managing a doctor's office for the last however many years. Why have we not been capitalizing on that?
Right.
So like between those three people, we're able to take, say, like a business and understand, you know, what people need to hear and how they need to have it presented to them in order for you to be able to communicate effectively.
Right.
Which is essentially like
User
user experience, which like blew my mind when we were on the phone. I was like, dude, like we're doing that. I didn't know we were doing that. I didn't know it had a name, but we're doing it.
Right.
So like,
amazing.
So when you first discovered like that human factors was a thing, like you watched the Don Norman video,
right,
and you were able to reach out to these people that were in that field, like what did that do for you as far as like validation that this was a field that you could go into? Like what did that feel like knowing that you finally had like a path? Because I know that like getting thrown off the pre-med path was probably like you're kind of in limbo a little bit. So once you were able to nail that down, what was that like?
I mean, it's gonna sound really cliche, but I felt like I made it. I was like, this is it. Like,
Mama, I made it.
Mama, I made it. That's what I felt like.
It.
I really felt like, you know, I found something that I can do for the rest of my life. And I don't care, like, I don't care if I got to go to another country. I don't care, like, if I have to travel. I don't care about finance or anything. Like, this is something that I'm going to succeed at. There was, like, nothing stopping me. And then, like, I got into ASU, and I was like, it wasn't even a thought. I was like, okay, I'm going. Like, I'm going to leave this place that I've been at for, like 17 years, and I'm just going to go to another place where I don't know people, but, like, you know what, it's going to happen. And so I really felt like it was, I don't know, it's weird. Like, it wasn't exciting, but it was peaceful. It was like, this is like, I found something that
you have to have extreme confidence in what you're doing to uproot your life like that.
Yeah.
No one who's wavering on what they want to do for the rest of their life is just going to kind of say, unless you're insane, it's just like, I'm just going to move. I'm just going to go. I don't know what's going to happen, but yeah, sure. I don't even know if I like what I'm doing, but I'm going to drive all the way out there to go and do this.
Right.
Well, and that's a beautiful thing right there. I mean, like before we even really dive into the human factors and like that major and everything and what your experience has been at ASU,
Right.
I really want to talk about the fact that like something that I wish was spoken about more was, and I'm really passionate about this, is like the fact that you don't need to like be shoved into school right away as an 18-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Because like 18-year-old kids, I know I was stupid. Like I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was just kind of like, nah, like this is fine. But so like I kind of fell into nursing, but if that hadn't have happened, I would have wasted 15 grand going to Walsh freshman year.
And that's a far too common story that I hear all the time.
Right. Or like
$30,000 down the shitter because I thought I liked this and then started taking the classes, and then all of a sudden maybe I liked it or I didn't like it, or maybe I'm just not good at it, or it's not something that, warrants my time and abilities to actually
or
accomplishing what I want to do.
Parents that are pushing you in a certain direction or anything else, which I mean he explicitly talked about, right?
Yeah.
But like there's one of two things that could have happened right there. Like you could have tried to gut it through and then potentially made it all the way to becoming a physician and then hated your life for the rest of your life because it's not something that you felt intimately connected with.
Right.
That it wasn't, it's almost like you're just disconnected from the job. Like you're not actually passionate about your work. You're just doing it to satisfy social norms. Or you try to address it early on and like accept that, it's okay that this isn't necessarily where I fit. I'm going to purposely try to find somewhere that I do fit.
Right.
Like if you can find where passion meets like logistical sense, that's a beautiful place to be.
Right.
So like that process, I know that there's probably kids out there because I know that there's like high schoolers that listen to this show just because of my brother and other stuff like that. So if you were talking to a high school kid and they were trying to figure out how to talk to their parents about the fact that they're like not wanting to do what they're like either being forced to do or what they thought they were going to do. Because I know some people are like, oh, I can't go back now. I've been telling people for the last 5 years that I wanted to be a doctor. Like there's no way I can go to school to be an electrician.
Yeah.
Like how did that conversation go? And like, how would you recommend that somebody that's in that place approach that?
Well, the thing is, like, the number one thing is you have to understand when you make that transition from 17 to 18, just because it's, eventually you're going to turn 18 years old, right? You have to understand you're going to have a lot more freedom and a lot more power just by virtue of the fact that society is going to look at you as an adult. Society is going to expect you to make choices. When I went to college, there was nothing that my parents could have done to stop me from going into like psychology. They can't pick your major for you, right? They don't need to sign a permission slip to override a major change. They don't need to drop classes. So the thing is, you have to understand you have a lot of power when you're an adult, when you turn 18. The second thing is you have to understand, like, in our society, and I think in basically the entire world, there's this notion that like, your family is always going to be there for you. And that is true, and I do believe that. But like the thing that people don't talk about, and I feel like the conversation that needs to happen that people necessarily aren't ready to have, is your family is also going to hold you back. Like the people that you have to like talk to, or even like just straight up fight with the most, so that they can like understand who you are and what you are. Like I'm a person that likes people, but I'm also, what I am is a guy that just has a good intuition about people, and I also like to create things and build things. Like trying to explain that, I mean, it's just something you have to do. Like you're gonna have to like sit down, and you might have to get into a fight, and that's not something that children want to do with their parents. But your parents aren't living your life for you. Like they want to live, parents want to live vicariously through their children, but it just is not gonna happen.
We're gonna get in some trouble for this episode, but I'm not gonna stop it because I agree with it 100%.
No.
Like,
I agree with
back
everything
it,
you were saying.
so.
The only caveat that I have to it is I feel like there's at least some people that I've known that students feel that they can't go back on what their parents want them to do because they're the ones footing the bill for it. And that's very much like kind of the case with my girlfriend and whatnot. Like, she very much lucked out that she loves occupational therapy, and that's after a switch from PT to OT, as well as she's really good at it. But I don't know how many times in the last 3 years I've heard, after binge watching 4 hours of a crime scene investigation, that she would have loved to gone to school to be a crime scene investigator.
Right.
I'm like, if you're really passionate about it, I mean, there's nothing to say you can't get into that now or later in life or whatever.
Right.
Granted, she does like what she's doing, but never in a million years I don't think she would have come home and turned around and been like, yeah, not going to be PT anymore. I'd rather, check out dead bodies.
Right.
And that's just because, her parents and whatnot footed the bill for all of undergrad, and I think some of even her master's program that she's in now and whatnot. But like you said, those individuals and those people that you're talking to, the ones that are closest with you, is where communication is the biggest component that you have to have with them.
Yeah.
Because if you explain it to them in a way like you were saying, you're like, it's not that I'm not good at it, it's not that I can't grind it out and make it work.
Right.
But that has a very short fuse on the time that I'm going to be,
in school.
Yeah, well, not just that, but out of school, that career, like how the time period from me starting to
whatever else
is going to come up way sooner than if it were something that I like to do.
Right.
And I don't think any parent worth their 2 cents, if you go to them and you explain to them, this is something I'm really passionate about, I think I can make a living doing it, whether it be X amount of dollars or 7 figures or whatever. I don't think any parent, if you really go and talk to them and they really have your best interest at heart or whatever, are going to sit there and be like, no, we can tell you're miserable, go back to school to being a doctor, over I can see that this is something you really care about, that you're good at, that you've shown interest in, and you have our blessing or whatever to pursue it as a career until your heart's content.
Right. I also would say, like, parents that foot the bill for their children going to college is like, well, you'd rather foot the bill and the person not do well in school, in the classes,
or hate what they're doing,
and be miserable, or would you rather them be successful and know that you helped pay for that?
Exactly.
Right. Well, and that's my thing. So, like, when I was gonna go join the military, like, it was not necessarily super well received in my household.
Right.
Mostly because my mom grew up in like Slovakia with a not so happy perception of what military meant.
Right.
And then my dad grew up during Nam.
Oh wow.
So that was like
two bad perspectives.
Yeah, and so when I said I was going to join, and I was also like a juvenile delinquent when I was in high school, so like my dad was like, "Man, you're not going to make it.
You're not cut for this.
What are you doing?"
Yeah.
But then I ended up joining, and it was the best decision I ever made. But it was because like, I'm going to kind of. I don't even think you need your parents' blessing. Like, if they're the ones footing the bill, then you should have that conversation and stuff like that. But I would rather go in debt doing something that I'm happy and passionate doing than have somebody foot my bill.
Right.
And it's like people get so wrapped up in the money, in the monetary thing. They're like, oh, I can't go into debt for college. Like, they're paying for everything, all this other kind of stuff.
It's hard not to when you have a bill for $300,000 coming
in
the mail.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And that's tough. It's a tough thing. But it's like, I have gotten to the point where it's, I'm potentially leaving nursing as a field and looking at doing this full time, which I never thought was going to happen.
Right.
But I also never thought that we would have something where we're, interviewing fellow classmates that are pursuing cool majors and
our own studio.
Yeah, our own studio and all that other kind of stuff. But it's literally because the amount of people that have called this stupid in the last 3 years is off the charts. But also,
it's just not understood.
But it's not understood. But as long as you understand it and you're passionate about it and it makes you happy, that's the conversation I think that needs to happen. Is what genuinely sets your ass on fire and makes you happy. Like my grandpa always told me, he's like, if you find something that you're so good at that people want to pay you more because you're so damn good at it,
Mhm.
that's where the money is.
It becomes very easy
It
to
becomes
convince people why it's important.
Exactly. Which is,
yeah.
I think, what ended up happening with you, where you
Yeah.
just like, you found something where you're like, I fit this so well
Mm-hmm.
that I'm like, there's no other option for the universe but to manifest this for me because I'm
Exactly.
so happy with it.
Exactly.
Like I found my puzzle piece.
Exactly.
Mama, I made it.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah, that's definitely it. I think like a lot of people that have felt this way too. It's like if you look at Apple, you look at Steve Jobs, like the secret formula for Apple's success is this human factors and user experience thing. But the thing is, Steve Jobs, he was just uh, he had this intuition about him and this ability to like understand what people would want that like they didn't already have. I mean, the iPhone or the iPod
Mhm.
when it first came out, like he understood that was the thing that like when this hits the market, when it's out there for consumers, that's the thing that's gonna change everything. Like this is gonna change how people listen to music. This is
Mhm.
gonna change how people consume music, and he did the same thing with the iPhone. I mean, when the iPhone hit the market, it overthrew BlackBerry,
Mhm.
which was the biggest phone at the time. It's all about understanding what it is that people don't have that they are going to love when it's out
Later
there.
on.
Exactly.
So I guess I mean and I'm not saying that we got off track or anything like that, but outside of doors,
Uh-huh.
and I mean you're slowly moving into modern technology and that
Right.
that kind of stuff.
Right.
What is it exactly that you're looking at when you're at school and studying? Is that kind of what it is, like projecting and knowing what people want before they even know they want it or it exists in the first place?
Not exactly. Um, that's very hard to do.
Yeah,
You gotta
yeah,
be.
no
I
kidding.
mean,
That's a shot in the dark.
yeah, you gotta be like, I mean, 1 in a billion type of person with
Mhm.
that. No, my study and my research is really focused on essentially just products and
Mhm.
product design, but also I'm doing work for the Army and also the Air Force.
Let's talk about Minecraft.
Let's talk about Minecraft.
'Cause that is like super intriguing to me.
Yeah.
So like because that's the work that you've been doing with the Army and the Air Force, right? Has been kind of Minecrafty based.
So yeah,
You're
it'd
shitting
be-
me.
it's
No, I'm like it's on his resume. It
Yeah.
literally says was looking. Hold on. Worked with a team on Air Force funded project that used Minecraft to simulate urban search and rescue techniques.
What?
Yeah.
I could see how it'd be implemented. You can build anything in that.
You can
damn
build
game.
anything. It's a Minecraft is a very good research platform for low fidelity testing. So basically, what we did was simulated an urban search and rescue task. So one of the things that urban search and rescue professionals do is they look at collapsed buildings
Mhm.
or damaged buildings, um, and they have to go in those, like in those buildings and find people
Mhm.
that have been trapped. Um, the thing that we wanted to do was study human robot interaction because robots are being used more and more in urban search and rescue. So if you can, basically what we did was we created a damaged office building that had fire and like collapses and blockages
Mhm.
and victims spread throughout the building. And what we wanted to do was study how people and these robots are going to communicate so that they can complete this task of searching the building.
Getting people out.
Yeah, for getting people out. And that was all done in Minecraft.
Wow.
And now my professor, Nancy Cook, shout out to Nancy Cook, just got a $2.8 million grant. And we're now doing more Minecraft study, again, doing urban search and rescue. Because we're now looking at like more sophisticated robotic agents that are going to be able to help. We don't build robots. We don't build. I mean, I'm not an engineer. I'm a scientist. I study communication. Even though the major is human systems engineering, I always tell people that we're not engineers, we're scientists. So my research primarily focuses on the communication between humans and like autonomous agents. Autonomous meaning they have autonomous capabilities such as being able to communicate or being able to take in stimuli from the environment and then project that to people like this thing just showed up, or the ability to make decisions on their own depending on what it is that they're perceiving.
So like things that possess like an AI
Yeah,
kind of thing almost.
artificial intelligence. Yep.
So that kind of makes me curious. Like, what is your perception on how AI is going to affect
hmm
how we interact with the world,
Right.
or how like people? I mean, people have this conspiracy that Alexa is like Terminator,
Right.
right? But like, how do you perceive artificial intelligence in the next 5 years?
So I the way I kind of break it down is there's two types of fears. One I call it an unrealistic fear, like a sci-fi fear, and the other one is more realistic. The unrealistic is all of these things that people say like robots are going to take over the world.
Skynet, the whole
That-
shebang.
Exactly, iRobot.
Yeah,
And then
Well, I haven't heard of that movie in a while.
it's a classic.
and then which I don't think is ever going to happen. I don't ever think we're going to have fully autonomous technology. It just wouldn't make a lot of sense having robots walk around like humans do. The whole idea of inventing automated technology is to help people with whatever they're already doing.
To augment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the other type of fear is a more realistic fear, and it's the fear that people are going to lose their jobs in the future. I feel like that is something that's going to happen. We see it now with those kiosks. If you ever go to a fast food restaurant, you can kind of order your own food.
Yeah.
So it's taking the human out of the loop. But I think on the other hand, where some jobs are going to disappear because AI, there are probably going to be other jobs because AI always has to be monitored.
Yeah, maintenance, whatever.
Exactly. So,
I mean, it's just going to cause a shift.
exactly.
You know, I mean, the Industrial Revolution caused a shift.
I have a feeling, they tell you to go to trade schools and stuff because those are like welding and whatnot. I think there's going to be a massive boom in trade-related, jobs when it comes to maintenance and assembly of artificial intelligences in the next 5 to 10 years or whatever. Because if I'd be hard pressed not to see a trade school open up with, around multiple ones open up around the country with specifications and maintenance and operating of the operating systems, or even like the direct mechanical fixing or tweaking of artificial intelligence like that,
or like even just knowing, okay, hey, this mechanical function is meant to be controlled by artificial intelligence.
Right.
How do I fix this mechanical thing that is currently broken, even though the AI is telling it it's supposed to be doing something?
Right.
Like, what's the disconnect?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like I think that there's just going to be a shift.
Yeah.
I think that the world is massively shifting, and like kind of we talked before the mics came on, that the human is never going to be completely removed, but the internet, artificial intelligence, and everything like that is going to swallow and completely dismantle every norm that there is outside of brand recognition and the ability to communicate.
Exactly.
Like, if you can't communicate effectively and empathetically with your base over the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to get real weird.
It is
for people.
The only issue is with a switch like that, when it comes to technology and AI and robotics part of it, as soon as they know that the formula works, it can be mass produced and shipped in months.
Right.
Where it takes probably years to get someone to dedicate themselves to that profession, to go to school for it, to learn how to fix it. Thus, we're already, 2 to 3 years behind the technology that's already there. Exactly. And that will be a rough 2 to 5 years.
It's going to be an interesting
It'll be a rough
transition.
2 to 5 years, but once people realize that this is the new standard of living, this is the norm, the technology, the AI that we're working with, and now I can go to school for, minimal cost to learn about these things that, now is
there'll be
on
the-
every street corner.
The Artificial
Y- y-
Intelligence
yeah.
Institute, founded by Shwaiz Bhatti and
Yeah,
RJ Holiday.
there
Y'all know
it
what I
is.
see, baby.
There it is.
You know, we're gonna be listening to this show 5 years from now and be like, "I told you guys."
It's not even going to be us. It's just going to be robots talking in place for us.
Right. So the Minecraft, like what like exactly goes into you, like, do you build a building and then like try to figure out how the robot interprets what that building is doing? Because you said that you're not the engineer,
right.
right? Which is kind of how I initially pictured it,
Right.
where it was like, okay, we're gonna build this fake building and then figure out, you know, what is the robot gonna do? How are we gonna build the robot so that it goes through here? But that's more the engineering side then,
Right.
right? So you're studying how the information is communicated either from the robot to the human
Yeah.
or from the human to the robot.
Right.
Okay. So
Right.
what does that look like as far as, you know, what exactly are you tweaking in the communication that increases the effectiveness of that robot?
Right. So the idea is there's a whole field of study. It's like human robot interaction, human computer interaction. What we're tweaking is interaction strategies. So basically, for the experiment, we had 4 different types of conditions. Either the robot just doesn't explain anything at all, or the robot explains everything, even if you don't ask it to, or the robot explains.
Need to know basis.
Yeah, or just when you ask,
Mhm.
or we prime the participant to ask questions. And so the idea is, you know, this robot is it can move on its own, right? And it
Inside the game.
inside the game. Well, it's the Wizard of Oz style type of thing.
It's
So,
the man behind the curtain.
man behind the curtain
Gotcha.
type
So
of thing.
someone is controlling it.
Someone is controlling
but
it.
you have that person working under those 4 conditions.
Right.
And then you're observing and taking note
Right.
on what the person is doing based on what the man behind the curtain's 4
Right.
operations are.
Right. We have we make them so the participant communicates with the Wizard of Oz person who's playing the role of the robot
Gotcha.
through a text chat system.
Okay.
So we look at that and see how these communications affected how well you know, the people correctly identified victims, because we have the participant mark on a map the victims and where they are and if they're alive or deceased.
Gotcha.
So the idea is because in the future, like we said, you know, they're gonna automated technologies are gonna augment human tasks. In order for that to happen, there needs to be communication.
Mhm.
So people and robots are gonna have to communicate and talk to each other.
Now, I guess my biggest question here is the 4 operations that you're giving the robot
Mhm.
and all that. Is it based on? Are you basing this on technology that you already know is kind of like here and workable?
Mhm.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, no, communication abilities for automated technologies are improving rapidly.
Gotcha.
It's just something that needs to happen.
Mhm.
Just because, you know, AI is taking over everything, you need to be able to communicate with it. And so the way, you know, AI, basically the way it works is it takes in a lot of data, machine learning
Mhm.
type of thing, that takes in data and then basically outputs something, whatever it is, to the human. And hopefully it's something that the human understands. So the idea is
So you're fine tuning it.
fine tuning.
It goes
the
from
communication.
1s and 0s to beeps and boops into unlegible English into something that is easy and quick for someone to recognize, know why they're doing it, when it needs to be done, and how it's going to get done.
Right.
I like it.
It's kind of like that transition. And this isn't artificial intelligence, but this is just like where my brain went
Mhm.
with user experience.
Yeah.
I know there was a big shift in the last, I think it was just in the last 3 years, from exit signs being red to being green,
Mhm.
because deep down, like, people were not running out of buildings or missing exit doors because red is associated with stop
Right.
inside of our society. So they changed a lot of the exit signs to green,
Yeah.
as in like, you
Go.
know, this is an
Get
exit. You
out.
can run out of this
Right.
door.
Right.
But that's something that, like, it didn't 2 and 2 didn't really get put together for me until just now. You know, we're talking about user experience and like what the perceptions are and how the human is interpreting an output,
Mhm. Yeah.
and that something as simple as a color change
Right.
can
Yeah.
completely shift how the human brain like acts in that split second, or even like RJ brought up, that horizontal handle versus a vertical handle
Exactly. Yeah.
on a door.
Mm-hmm.
So he's basically doing what we do when we put a show together.
Yeah.
We take a rough, like, outline of like what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
We record it. We file it down we keep filing it down until it's the most easily consumable product that we can ship forward.
Right.
And that's basically what you're doing for the side of how the robots and artificial intelligence is going to most effectively communicate with the person that it has to communicate with.
Right.
So, okay, that's awesome. So obviously the first testings within Minecraft went, I'm assuming, pretty well to get such a highly monetary grant passed your guys' way. So
Right.
now that this second phase is going through, what changes?
So that I'm not really too sure about.
Mm-hmm.
We just got the grant.
Congratulations,
thank
by the way.
you.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Obviously, your work is doing something to fork up that kind of money.
Right.
Christ.
Yeah.
And we're meeting with other scientists.
Mhm.
They're gonna come to ASU, and I think then that's when we're gonna figure out exactly where we want to take the project.
Gotcha.
They're gonna come to ASU. They're gonna look at our Minecraft.
Have they been doing the same thing, but like
Yeah.
on their own?
I don't know. I don't think they've been using Minecraft.
Maybe something else.
Maybe something else. And I don't think
Roblox.
Connects.
Yeah.
Maybe. But I think when they come, that's when the decision is going to be made of what exactly do we want to use this grant money for and
Right.
use Minecraft
Right.
for. I know that there's instead of like there being sort of a Wizard of Oz, there's going to be a new basically robot within the game that they're trying to implement within
Program in there, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
an actual artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, that only helps you, because if it can actually learn from what you're doing, then it's
Mm.
just constantly upgrading itself.
Right.
Makes your job a little easier.
Yep.
Right, that's awesome. I never
Mhm.
even thought of that as a possibility. That's crazy. God, I love video games.
So on top of, now that RJ's over nerding out over Minecraft, I'm going to nerd out over something that I
Sure.
think
Yeah.
is super
What's your guys'
cool.
private server for that? Can I
Right.
get the? Oh, can I get that? Me and my buddies would love to come and hang out.
So I'm really interested in, there's this one bullet point
Mhm.
that like really stuck out to me on your resume,
Sure.
right? And it says that you're currently developing metrics for measuring team states,
Yeah.
like situational awareness, team trust, workload, and resilience.
Yeah.
Talk to me.
Oh.
Like,
Okay. So
whisper these sweet nothings into the microphone, because this is stuff that I'm like, I will nerd out over, because I was the NCOIC of training
Mhm.
at the 179th Airlift Wing for 3 years, right? And when I took over that program, it's a program of 30 to 50 kids that are like 17 to, I think the oldest person I had that enlisted was like 32
Mhm.
into the military. And my job was to prep them, to make them resilient, have them understand team situational awareness and critical thinking
Mhm.
before they went to boot camp.
Okay.
So I'm like super intrigued as to like, what these metrics are, because the base knows that we've seen an increase in retention and like new enlistee satisfaction at the bottom of the totem pole ever
Mhm.
since I took over, but they can't figure out like why that is.
Mhm.
So like the metrics would be sweet.
So this is a different project. It's the one that's funded by the Army. So the idea is that in the future, the Army wants to develop these tanks that are going to have autonomous capabilities. Under the guidance of my advisor, who's an expert in team communication and team cognition, for the first year, what we basically did was work with 2 scientists, human factor scientists that work for the Army. We conducted subject matter experts with former tank commanders to learn about basically how a tank platoon runs. We were also fortunate enough to have a former tank commander on our team who's doing his PhD. And we also traveled into like Boston for an Army Research Lab summit. Basically, for that first year, though, through doing all of those things and also reading literature and studying Army doctrines and manuals, we basically came up with this taxonomy of communications that we thought were going to be important in order for these tanks to communicate effectively with human soldiers.
Hmm.
And then moving on to the second year, we identified 4 team states that we thought were absolutely important. So that's the situational awareness, the trust, the workload, and the resilience. We're trying to develop metrics to measure all of those things. So for my thesis, for my master's, I'm looking at team trust. Right now, in the existing literature, there's no metric that exists for appropriately calibrating trust, because you can't just have good trust, right? Trust is
Buildable.
It's a very
And it's easily losable.
Yeah.
exactly. So it's
Yeah.
very dynamic and it fluctuates all the time. So I'm looking at how these tanks can use this ability to push information onto soldiers
Mhm.
as a way of possibly measuring trust, because if you're pushing more information onto me that I need, but I don't have to ask you for it, I might have higher trust.
Mm.
Whereas if you're not pushing information, but you have it and I need it, then I might have lower trust.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I mean, and so there's 2 examples that I'll bring up that kind of perfectly fit that, like with the team trust thing.
Mhm.
So one is just my personal experience as an RN. Is like I came into the ICU float pool as the first new grad to ever be hired at Altman into the ICU float pool.
Mhm.
Like new grads have been hired into the step down float pool and everything else, but they hadn't really hired them into the ICU because they were like, new grads gonna kill somebody,
Right.
Like
Right.
they can't handle it,
Right.
You know what I mean? Which
It's just a lot of pressure.
it's,
man.
and it is a lot of pressure, and
Yeah,
I like
definitely.
you definitely have to have a specific personality and low key kind of a chip on your shoulder
Right.
to make it through learning 3 ICUs and the ER in under a year. But in order to gain that trust of like the experienced ICU nurses, like the advice that I give to some of the people that got hired in after me is like, even if you know what medication you need to give, ask them
Anyway.
and like don't play stupid, but like ask them between this medication and this medication that are similar, and then have them pick it for you and draw them in as a mentor, because it'll make them trust you more because they know that you're willing to ask questions.
Yeah.
Even if it's like, I did that all the time. It was just like, hey, like I'm going to hang this fluid on this patient. Do you think that that's a good idea? Little stuff that just like increased their confidence that I wasn't going to do something that I wasn't comfortable with.
Right.
And then the other side of it is that I was watching a Simon Sinek video the other day, and I know that SEALs actually have a metric for this. I mean, it's not a calibrated, usable, trackable metric, but they have this thing as far as like optimal performance versus highest trust.
Yeah.
And you're actually looking for people that are kind of higher on the trust spectrum and a mid-level performer. Those people tend to do better in the special forces world.
Yeah.
Because the people that are the high performers but have no trust,
Lone wolves.
yeah, they operate better solo.
Right.
They're not a team dynamic person.
Right.
Somebody could have, extremely high trust and be a bottom third performer or a medium level performer.
Yeah.
And as long as they maintain proficiency, they tend to do better in that team setting.
Right.
And that's kind of how I view like our team with Apex, is that we're all kind of like mid-level performers, but we trust each other so much that we can all operate pretty much independently.
But it makes it better when we're bouncing ideas off of each other.
Right, because that trust level is so high.
Yeah.
And I think that that's phenomenal that we're trying to find a calibrated way to bring that human trust back into the conversation.
Yeah.
Because I think that it's been so focused on performance for the last 10 years or 20 years.
Yeah.
Easy. I mean, forever, apparently, because if there's no literature on trust metrics, then we've never really been focused on it. But like, if people are able to trust each other in the workplace, there is a massive difference in the ability for the team to function cohesively.
Right.
Like, I mean, it's
And that's
insane.
all different too, because it depends on the workplace as well. I mean, you go into the military assuming that you're working with people closely because everybody has their best interests at heart. Well, when you go and work in a cubicle,
Right.
you're basically pre-trained to know that that son of a b over there is going to try and take my job the minute that he can, because it nets him more money and nets him more status in the company, whatever.
Right.
And then you have people withholding information, purposely stepping on each other's toes. Thus, then the company, starts going down on its own anyway, because you have no one working together. So I think that is like in corporate business sense, I think that is a common occurrence and thought that a lot of it, like lower level employees have.
Right.
That, I mean, can definitely be mitigated based on a company's incentives and the way that they structure their hierarchy within the company.
So did you pick trust or were you assigned it?
I picked it. I remember when I was writing my personal statement when I was applying to ASU, I wrote about trust and how people perceive technologies. So when it came time to like pick a thesis topic, I just picked trust again.
Do you think most people trust the technology that they use every day?
I think most people do. I think there's an issue with sort of these big companies and transparency. Transparency in the sense that, like, well, they collect your data.
Yeah.
But you don't know what they do with it
Gotcha.
necessarily.
Oh yeah, many a times have I been talking about like Chipotle or some type of food at the gym where I'm not on my phone, but I'm like listening to Pandora.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, 2 songs later, come on down to Jimmy John's. We'll get you. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Exactly.
I've never heard a Jimmy John's thing on here ever.
Exactly.
Not once. I literally just talked about it. I don't know if that's, like, what do they call it?
Passive, like audio.
No,
pickup
it's
and stuff.
correlation isn't causation or
Right,
whatever.
right,
But I was like, this is pretty weird.
Yeah.
You've got bias confirmation and stuff.
It's also, I think, people's concern with their personal privacy.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there's no secret. I mean, Google's admitted this. They do listen to you. They're all of the Google devices. They're constantly listening to you. I think people trust their technology.
Get rid of my phone right now. Get out.
But I think it's just.
But that once again can be mitigated if there's a level of transparency within the company. It's like, hey, yeah, we're recording you. It's really hard not to. It's very difficult to turn on and off a mic, especially when 2/3 of the population all have some type of basically recording device. They call them cell phones. They call them, but they are just recording everything that you do.
Right.
I go, if there's that level of trust, like you said, between the company that is putting out these devices and the end consumer, you can clear up that communication line of like, okay, yes, we're taking this information, but it's not
so we can send you a Jimmy John's coupon.
Yeah, it's not
exactly.
to sell you to other corporations and your information to other corporations, but to basically, at the end of the day, make your user experience as easy and as seamless as possible. Mm-hmm. I find it very hard pressed that anybody's going to be like, oh, wow, I guess I can be even more lazy because when I just look at my phone and I think about Jimmy John's, I have a $15 off coupon that's already there at my fingertips.
Right.
I mean, if it were for Wendy's, hell yes. Sign my ass up. If every time I clicked my phone on, there was a coupon for a spicy number 11, deal. I'm done. Sell my soul to the Wendy's devil.
You're just on your phone, spicy number 11, Wendy's.
It's here. It's already at the door.
Exactly.
My phone knows that I was thinking about it. So he called me an Uber Eats. And the minute I get up from this interview, there's a man downstairs waiting with a spicy number 11. Done.
Exactly.
I'm done.
There it is. High levels of trust right
put
there.
Put me in the oven. I'm done.
Wow. That rabbit hole hard.
Well, I'll be right into the show. I guarantee I'm not the only one that would love that. Not just for Wendy's. Pick your favorite food place. I don't care what it is. Dunkin' Donuts coffee just delivered to you the minute you wake up because your phone knows when your alarm's set, so it orders it 15 minutes early. Deal.
Dude.
Spicy number 11s are a very important thing to have a
Yeah,
conversation
you just keep saying it over again. Spicy number 11, spicy number 11, spicy number 11.
It's got onion straws, queso cheese, bacon, jalapenos. Yes.
You trying
is
to
by
get,
far
you
their
trying to
best
get all up
sandwich.
in that sandwich, aren't
I
you?
already know what I'm getting after this.
Oh my God. But anyway, well, there's our rabbit hole for the show. There always has to be at least one.
Done.
There always has to be at least one. He
It's
has
culture
to check
at
it
this
off his
point.
list.
Yeah.
It is culture. No, I mean the listeners are going to be ticked because it took 58 minutes for us to rabbit hole.
Yeah, I got it.
Most of the time,
I got you, fam.
Most of the time, it happens within the first 10 or 15 minutes.
I waited.
Yeah, you were patient this time.
Prime opportunity to talk about Wendy's.
Yeah. So with the trust and everything, right? I kind of want to shift it into just kind of like the episode wrap up, right?
Okay.
So I was looking at these questions, and the ones that we normally ask people, and I think that there's one that really stands out to me that I think will kind of open up the door for you to really impart like the wisdom that you've gained over the experience that you've had between leaving pre-med, picking a new major, going into a field of psychology that professors didn't know about,
Right.
and everything else. So the question is this: if you could have a billboard anywhere,
Okay.
with anything on it,
Mm-hmm.
right, and theoretically millions of people are going to pass this billboard on a daily basis and
Okay.
pay attention to what it says,
Okay. Oh boy.
what would you put on that billboard and why? Like, what would you want those millions of people to see?
Oh man, it's only one thing.
Well, so I mean, just kind of like I mean, we were talking about like what your message was this entire episode, like, and so I'm assuming, you know, what do you wish that you would have known? Like, if you were going to put that on a billboard for those people to see, what would it be?
I think it's just basically, I think you have to just be true to yourself. You know, you can't lie to yourself and just be like, I'm gonna do this thing because someone else wants me to, and you know, I guess I can be successful in it. Like you're gonna end up hating your life, you're gonna be miserable. So I guess on that billboard, what I would want people to understand, or the message I would want to give people, is you gotta bet on yourself. This whole game of life is a gamble. Anyone you know, like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, oh gosh, Dr. Dre, you know, all these guys.
Wow.
The man.
We got
man.
Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and Dr. Dre in
All
the same
the-
room at the same time. What a conversation that would be.
And all these guys are successful and like the top of their fields because they just took a chance on themselves. They knew what they wanted. They knew what they were passionate about. They just studied so hard, and they never stopped studying. They never stopped learning about it. So it's you have to find something that's passionate, and you can't listen to anyone. You can't listen to anyone. You have to know what you like. You have to know what you want to do. But you got to take that bet on yourself. You got to take that bet, like, you know, my parents probably won't support this. People probably won't understand what it is, but I'm going to do it anyway. If you want just even the tiniest aspect of amazing in your life, the tiniest aspect of like, oh my God, I can't believe this is the life I'm living, you got to be willing to take that risk and take that chance.
I'm gonna start foot stomping and clapping up in here. It's about to turn into church. Like, amen, hallelujah. Like somebody else that we've interviewed. And it's kind of been a theme with some of the guests that we've had, but holy crap, was that articulated well.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that.
Like I'm going to steal that 100%.
Go ahead,
you know what I
man.
mean? Just like you have to be willing to bet on yourself because nobody else is going to.
Exactly.
That's deep. I mean, and that I think that really hits home for Apex in general and like what we've been doing the last couple of years. Because like, I remember when we first started blogging, like people were like, "What are you doing?" You know, or even like when me and Popio first started recording, it was still, "Why are you why are you doing this?" Or like the biggest thing that we've gotten is like, "Oh, that's a cute hobby."
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
that really grinds my gears.
Very
But
condescending type of thing.
yeah, and almost, and that's the thing. Like, I don't understand people's, like, yes, you have to bet on yourself, and that's tough. It's really hard to do,
Right.
but we could all make it easier on people to bet on themselves and take risks if we weren't such dickheads to each other when people
Right.
are trying to pursue things outside of the box.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
I like a lot of the content that I post is literally giving permission to people, like, even if they don't know me, to just be like, hey, if you're thinking about doing this, take the leap. Like, I'll be waiting at the bottom of the mountain with a blow up mattress.
Exactly.
But you have to take the jump. If nobody else is telling you they believe in you,
Mhm.
I'm telling you right now in this post that I believe in you.
Exactly.
And like, your journey is just a massive testament to that exact concept.
Yeah. No, if you, this is to all the people listening, all the high schoolers and the young college kids, if you know that you're passionate about something but you're not doing that thing right now, stop what you're doing. At this very moment, you gotta stop what you're doing, and you gotta just go for it. Talk to who you gotta talk to.
Life's too short, man.
Life is too short. You gotta talk to who you gotta talk to. Fight with who you gotta fight with. But at the end of this day, you make sure that when you wake up tomorrow, you make some changes in your life, because you don't know when you're gonna die, and you don't know you don't know if you can, if you're gonna love, listen, what doing what someone else told you to do. Make some changes, and I promise you, you'll be glad you did. As long as you're not doing something that, like, where you're hurting people.
Yeah.
or-
Wait.
Yeah.
As long as you're not doing something that, like, ruins your reputation,
You're like,
right?
All these voices. Have been
Yeah.
I need to.
Serial murderer. Here we come.
No, don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. But no, if there's really is just something that you're truly passionate about, make some changes today.
2020 is in a month, man.
Exactly.
Big things are about to change. Anything.
Yeah.
I truly believe at this point they're like career wise and, you know, standard of living and all that kind of stuff. You can make a living in today's day and age doing anything that you're passionate about.
Exactly.
There is someone somewhere that wants to see you do what you enjoy doing, as well as willing to pay you buku amount of money to do it.
Exactly.
And
Definitely.
you have a $500,000 distribution capable device in your pocket.
Yeah, exactly. There's really no excuse
It,
for anyone not to put themselves out there in that in
it's
today's
just a
day and
content
age.
game.
Yep.
You got to brand yourself, and you got to, like, that's like you said, you need to do what you're passionate about, and in order to do that, you have to brand yourself as that person. Like, you
Mhm.
have to step into those shoes and start becoming that person.
And I will say one thing, because we did say, you know, life is short. You
Yeah.
gotta start now. But if you're in your 20s or your 30s and you want to make some changes, I would say go ahead and do that. I don't
Yeah.
care if you're a high school
It
kid.
doesn't matter age.
No, you
doesn't-
could be my mom is in her, she's going to be in her 50s
Yeah.
coming up here soon, and is like pursuing her master's in education.
Exactly.
It's never
It's
too
that's-
late.
never too late to
That's
pivot.
that's an interesting thing though, because like your mom, she's 50 today, right?
Yeah.
If she was 50 30 years ago, she would have been in the third quarter of her life. But
Right.
today,
Yeah,
she's at halftime.
yeah,
Yeah.
basically.
She's at
Yeah.
halftime.
You're right.
So she's got, like, there's never too late. The people are going to live so many longer lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I mean, my dad is still consistently learning. He's 64. Sorry, Dad, if I don't.
My mom's
Right.
62. It's all right.
But like, I mean, he's 64, where it's like he is still consistently going to conferences, learning about equipment. Like, he just loves his job. He loves selling medical equipment because he knows that the equipment that he sells
Yeah,
and these new lines that need to be adopted into healthcare systems, because he's a distributor,
right.
are like saving lives.
Exactly.
And so, like, he's so on fire about it. And that's what really set that in motion for me as a kid, was just like, I see how much my dad, like, has the ability to sell an ice cube to an Eskimo or a pork chop to a rabbi.
Exactly.
And, like, I want to be in a place where I'm so passionate about it that it's easy,
Yeah,
because it's natural.
exactly. Yep.
And, like, that whole premise, like, you don't have to have your life figured out at 18. You
Nope.
don't have to have your life figured out at 25. You don't have to have your crap figured out at 30. like the older that I get, the more that I realize that we're just like internally still 5-year-olds, still kind of rambling around trying to figure out what the is going on.
Exactly.
And we're just like got fancy pieces of paper that make people think that we understand something more in depth about how the world works. But in reality, we're just like, what's happening?
Yeah.
99.99% of the time.
Like the more I learn, the less I know.
Yeah, exactly. And if that's your approach, then that's positive. And there's
Yeah.
some people that like the more that they learn, the greater the expert they are, and then they're the ones, trying to sell you on their $15 million idea in a Facebook or a Facebook ad funnel.
Yeah.
And you're like, bro,
What's
like,
going on here?
like, do you actually own an LLC, or you just trying to sell me a course for $5,000 that's
Right.
worth $10,000? Where'd you get that price from, dude? Okay. The last one. So, if you had to give any piece of advice to somebody that wants to go into human factors psychology, what would it be?
It would be first number one, depending on whatever it is you want to do. If you want to be a researcher, if you want to be a user experience designer or a user interface designer, you're never gonna know everything, and don't feel like you have to. Because I remember when I was starting my master's, um, I felt like I knew nothing, and because it was like grad school, I felt like there was this expectation to know a lot. Um, but you're never going to be able to know everything you need to know. And with that being said, because if you go into grad school, or if you graduate college and end up getting a job as a user experience designer, there are going to be opportunities that come your way, where you're not gonna feel qualified. I would say take those opportunities anyway, and then learn what you need to learn afterwards. Um,
I like that.
because I feel like a lot of people, they just feel like they need to know everything before they do something.
Yep. And growth doesn't happen unless you stretch.
Exactly. Yep.
You have to stretch a little bit beyond your limit
Mhm.
in order to grow.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I would say take the opportunities that scare you or you feel like you're not ready for, and then just work every single day to be the best that you're hired to be, whether that's a researcher or a designer.
I like it. You got anything else, RJ?
No, I can't. I mean, he's a beautifully spoken individual.
Yeah, I mean, I
It's
almost feel
hard to- it's
personally
hard to
attacked
add.
because, like, I consider myself a relatively well articulated human, but I feel like I'm just getting demolished.
No,
Yeah.
please.
So-
No, there's no need to reinvent the wheel.
No,
I don't particularly think of myself as a well-articulated human. So
No, you
no,
did
man,
extremely
like,
well.
This is phenomenal. I mean, all of the points and the way that you speak so passionately about what you do is just, I think, is really going to be able to impact people. So, I mean, thanks for stopping by over your Thanksgiving break. I know
Yeah,
that,
thanks for making the
you
time.
only
No,
have
thank
a
you,
limited
guys.
amount of
Thank you.
time while you're back in Canton before you have to go back to Arizona.
Right.
So I appreciate you taking time out of your day to come
Problem
down.
at all. This was fun.
Good.
sure.
I
I'm
enjoyed
glad
this
you had a
lot.
good time.
Yeah.
Good, good.
Everybody comes on here and is like, yeah, that was a great conversation.
Yeah. So, with that, as always, if you would like to support the Apex podcast, the easiest way to do so at this point is to share our message. If there's somebody that you know of that needs to hear what we talked about today or in any other episode, because I know that y'all are listening and not sharing it 100% of the time, because otherwise our numbers would be substantially higher.
We see you.
We watching. I'm watching. So
AI
you need
is
to make sure
watching.
that you share. Yeah. AI is watching. Google Home knows.
We know. They tell us.
So
Shwaiz is developing a system for us so we know when you listen and do and don't share.
yeah. So if there's, you should be doing that for every episode. If there's an episode that you think that somebody inside of your friend group needs to hear, share it with them. It's not that hard. Just give them the message, because that's what we're all about. We're about trying to change these conversations that are being had and put those seeds into people's heads so that they can grow into harvests eventually. We're not looking at changing things right now, but we want to make sure that things are in the right momentum, that in the next 5 years that we can all be having these conversations and be in a successful place together.
Mhm.
And we're all chasing the apex together. That's the entire point of the movement. And with that, we'll catch you next time.
Mm-hmm.